Hi, this is Nick Corridor, and I'm presenting on the Ford Pinto disaster. The Ford Pinto was first released in 1971, and it was the first subcompact car that was produced by Ford in North America. The unique feature about the Pinto is that the gas tank was at the rear end of the car behind the rear axle. However, this gas tank would ignite if the car was rear-ended at any speed above 25 miles per hour, and this began a very long case that would hurt Ford's proud reputation. In 1971, the Ford Pinto was manufactured and it was sold to the public. Around 328,000 units were sold, and in 1972, reports came out of the explosion in low speed collisions. In 1977, an article titled Pinto Madness by Mother Jones was released, and it revealed the dangers behind the car, and it also revealed that Ford knew about the dangers, and they also tested it, but they did a cost benefit analysis and they decided that saving money was more important than saving human life. In 1978, Lee Iacocca was fired from Ford, and Ford also issued a recall of 1.5 million vehicles. In 1979, the state of Indiana pressed charges against Ford for criminal homicide, and the trial went until 1980, where Ford was found not guilty. When the Ford Pinto was first made in the early 1970s, it was supposed to be a very successful undertaking for Ford. However, since the Pinto was made to cost no more than $2,000 or way more than £2,000, along with only having a 25-month time period to be built, this meant that the company made poor decisions and would rather conserve money than to think of the safety of the customers. And this led to an estimated 900 deaths and even more injuries. Ford justified their decision by calculating that the total cost of fixing each car, which was $12 per car, is more expensive than paying for the damages and lawsuits. So the Ford Pinto, if it was ever rear-ended at any speed over 25 miles per hour, the gas tank, which was located behind the rear axle, would be crushed up against the rear passenger chair, and the tube that would lead to the tank would be ripped off and gas would spill everywhere. That rear axle also had sharp bolts coming out, which would also pierce the tank when it was crushed up against it, which led to more gas being spilled. But if the Pinto was hit at any speed around 40 miles per hour or more, the doors of the car would also get stuck and that would trap the passengers inside. And this led to a lot of people burning to their death. And here in the picture, you could see a schematic, like a little drawing, and you can see how the gas tank is behind the rear axle. So that's what got pressed up against the axle and got destroyed. Lee Iacocca was the leader going into the Ford Pinto production, but he wanted the car's price to be only around $2,000. And on top of that, he wanted it done in 25 months, which is much less than the normal time needed, which is 48 months. Um, Aside from all that, he also wanted the car to be no more than 2,000 pounds. Mr. Iacocca is also known for saying safety doesn't sell, which is not a very good phrase because I don't think you could really put a price on human life, no matter how much it's going to cost the company. And even the engineers knew about the errors in the Ford Pinto, but no one even wanted to confront Iacocca because they knew that they would be fired if they did. And this led to Ford being later exposed, and it really took a toll on the company's image, and Iacocca lost his job as well. And it was just poor ethical decision making. Ethically, Ford did everything wrong. They didn't consider safety at all in producing their vehicles. They just wanted a car that would be cheap and ready to go on the showroom floor very quickly. Um, they didn't think about the consequences that would come, and this was just made by selfish um, people in the penthouse offices, and it led to a lot of damage. And the biggest thing they did that is really sad is that they did a cost benefit analysis, which put the price of a human life at $200,000. And they said that that doesn't matter because that's um, less expensive than having to go into each Ford Pinto and putting in one plastic part to just make sure the tank won't rupture, which easy solution, but very sad. After this whole issue, Ford had to recall 1.5 million vehicles in 1978, and they also paid millions of dollars in lawsuits and damages. One of the biggest lawsuits was for a young man who was unfortunately injured in a Pinto accident, and his family sued, and they won $125 million. But Ford later appealed that, and it was brought down to 3.5 million, which is still a lot of money. But after they paid for all the damages and everything, Ford also installed this plastic part into the Pinto, which would go between the rear axle and the engine, or not the engine, the gas tank. And one like really cheap, it was like $2 per car, that prevented the explosions. And this could have all been prevented from the beginning if Ford decided to just not use the cheap way. So the consequences of all of this, it began with Ford selling 328,000 Pintos, but the car was defective, and consequently it led to 900 deaths, or that's an estimated number, and many injuries. Ford was exposed by Mother Jones along with Lee Iacocca and the engineers. And Mother Jones published an article which had all the details about how Ford did math that decided that um, human life, which was worth around $200,000 according to Ford, was um, a cost that Ford could take instead of having to pay even more money to fix each car to make them safe. Um, this led to the state of Indiana taking Ford to court over charge of homicide, and Ford was able to get away from that, and they were found not guilty. But then um, the company was just had this stain on their image of being such a great motor company. So moving forward, Ford Motor Company was an example that to everyone else that safety does sell, and this led to the future of automaking to revolve around safety. And now in the modern day, most people buy cars based on how safe they are, which is why brands like Volvo, Honda, Kia, and many others are so successful due to how they focus on the safety of the car and not how much money it can make the company. It also proved that cost benefit analysis cannot put a price on human life, which led to a new way of ethical thinking. And it's really all turned out for the better. And although there was a lot of damage done by the Ford Pinto, it really helped teach the automaking industry how to properly go about making their vehicles.